Right guys, by the title of this video, you know what is coming. I had a phone call early hours this morning at 1:27 a.m. by Chris, and unfortunately our great friend Ed Sweeney has passed away. He passed away around about 6 p.m. last night in the UK time.
Of course, Nick, for people that don't know the story of, I think the last couple of years of Ed's life, maybe we should do a little roundup. So Ed decided after years of travelling that he was actually going to retire, and he was going to retire in Asia. And this was around about the beginning of 2024.
Yes, yeah, beginning of 2024. I think he came out in January. Decided he was, as Marty says, decided he was going to retire. And his plan was to travel, do quite a bit of travelling around Thailand, also Laos, and then he was going to end up in Siem Reap, Cambodia.
So everything went to plan with Ed, and he did indeed retire. Happy days it seemed, and then he did move over to start his travels, and he was getting everything all lined up there. Now the big problem happened when, I think a few days before he was due to go to Cambodia, when he was in Pattaya, just another normal day where he's maybe wandering about Soi Buakhao enjoying himself, but then he took a bad turn where he had a problem with some feeling in his arm, Nick.
Yeah, he thought that he'd taken a stroke. Well, this is what the hospital said that he went to. I did at that point contact him, and I think he was sort of complaining about the price of some of what they wanted, and Ed was like, at this point, you know, I feel a bit unsteady on my feet, but I feel okay. But I messaged him and I said, Ed, you need to go back and get that test. And they thought at this point it was a stroke that he'd had. Now Eddie, I'd spoke to Eddie, and Eddie said, Luke, I think I'm going to return home back to the UK. And I said, oh, well, that's probably a good idea. I said, Eddie, where are you staying? He told me the hotel. This was a Thursday, and I said I'll come round on the Friday. When I got around there, he was kind of slumped in his chair and he couldn't move. And he booked his flight, trying to get back to the UK. And I said, I'm not sure you're going to get on this flight, Eddie, because you know he's paralysed on one side. But he was determined. He was determined. You know what Eddie's like, he's determined. He has to go. Now, I did tell him that if you've got any problems, you can't get on that flight, message me straight away. He didn't. The next day, the Saturday morning he was going, I was contacted by somebody in our group of members, that said they'd seen Eddie get rejected at the airport. But I told Eddie at the time, I said, you must message me straight away. Now, at this point, I did message Eddie myself, and now I knew that he couldn't type. So I asked him a few questions, and I just said, give me a thumbs up. And I said, Eddie, you didn't get on the flight, thumbs up. I said, Eddie, are you back in the same hotel in Pattaya? Thumbs up. I said, right, Eddie, same room, thumbs up. I'm on my way. As it turned out, he wasn't in the same room, but when I finally got to his room, the reception that were really good, I said, right, we're going, you're doing it my way now, Eddie. I'm going to take you to an hospital outside of Pattaya, and that was it. And then we got a taxi. He struggled to get him in a taxi because he was pretty much paralysed. And we went to Monetised in Sriracha. Now I remember going in there, and they were like, we would explain what happened. They seen us straight away, and they did a MRI scan straight away, and they found he'd got some kind of bleed on the brain. It was a bit cloudy, but they were unsure. Now at this point, I signed everything. I signed my life away because he wasn't sure if the insurance were going to pay, but it came back to me. But I thought, you know what, this guy's in pain. It doesn't really matter. But as it turned out, Eddie was insured. Now, the thing is with this, we went through, he was there for 6 weeks, and we went through, and I'll just have to bring this one up as well, big respect to Dan, the cameraman, because he came with me every single day. We risked our lives on that motorbike every single day going up there, but we felt like Eddie needed somebody by his side, because you could see he was pretty scared, as anybody would be. I've never seen Eddie sort of like that. And, you know, this went on for 6 weeks. It was a roller coaster. It was just a bit of fluid on the brain. And then towards they did an operation with the robot, if you remember that story. And then he's beholden by travel insurance. It's not the same as having insurance here. But to be fair to the post office insurance, they went through with this robot operation from the doctor, the surgeon said, we can do this way. They'd never done it before. They were using brand new AI tech. And it was successful. Eddie came out, and so, you know, we were on a hop. And then sort of towards the end, it was bad news. And the insurance said, we want to take him home. And of course, you know, get him home. There's something else, they said. And this is after 6 weeks of this emotional roller coaster. And at this point in time, I didn't know Chris or Mandy, Eddie's mates back in England, but I'm in contact with these guys. And we finally got him away, got him to Bangkok, and then they took him back to the UK. And I said to Chris at the time, passing the baton on now, Chris, it's down to you. Now, during this period, especially towards the end, Eddie said to me, he was very grateful, and he said, what can I do for you, Nick? And of course, I'm like, nothing at all, doesn't matter, Eddie. I just felt bad for him. It was that emotional roller coaster. Dan, the cameraman, we were in this sort of, we weren't doing videos, you know, Eddie was the main concern. And Eddie was grateful, and he was like, what can I do for you? And I was like, nothing. And I had a thought about this for 24 hours. And I went, right, okay, you can do something for me, Eddie. In January, this was May, I said, in January, it's my birthday. Make sure you get back for my birthday. And he was like, I will. Now, I did that for a reason. At this point, I knew it was bad news. But I did that for a reason, is to give him something to look forward to and something to fight to. And you know what? He made it. He came all the way back. And I think even at the time, Martin said, this could go horribly wrong. You know, the guy's terminally ill. And I was like, look, he has to do one thing, you know, he's this one thing. And when we picked him up at Suvarnabhumi Airport, that was quite emotional, and it was incredible to see him actually coming out. But he stuck to his word, you know. That gave him something to fight for, and he came back, and what a time we had, Martin.
Well, to Thailand.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
So that brings us on to January 2025. And at this point, Eddie is actually, in all intents and purposes, you kind of wouldn't know he was ill if you kind of met him and you had a chat with him. You know, he's sitting in the back seat of the car, you know, telling old stories of travels, etc. And, you know, he was really, really upbeat and really happy at this point. So he stayed his holiday. He'd done 3 weeks in Thailand.
He actually got stronger, didn't he, during that holiday period?
Yeah, that was a strange thing, wasn't it? He actually kind of lifted his spirits more. Being in the place he loves Thailand, he loves Asia, and I think that really lifted his spirits. Now, he did go back, he had a doctor's appointment at the end of January, so he felt compelled to go back and do some more tests, etc.
We didn't want him to go back, you know. I mean, we did put this to him, but we didn't want him to go back, because you've got to realise that Eddie had the most aggressive form of brain cancer, and there's a very tiny percentage. With virtually nobody who kind of survives that. So for me personally, I wanted him to stay here and perhaps give him some sort of alternative treatment. But you know, Eddie, he's kind of determined. Let me just go back to that. One of the great things about that vacation was seeing Chris come over here. He really picked up when his best mate Chris came, and we went to Koh Chang. We had 3 nights there. We hired a house, and what an incredible time. And you know, Eddie just seemed to get stronger. That character was back again. It's just hard to believe at the moment he went from that to passing away, and the way he's been for the last 3 months now. If I'm very honest with you, I haven't spoken to him for 3 months. He's not been able to. He's not been able to speak to anybody. So don't forget he had a brain cancer, so it's affected everything. He can't use his hands. He can't, he's paralyzed, and it's just got worse and worse for him. So, and it's been tough for Chris. It's been really tough for Chris seeing him, seeing his best mate sort of deteriorate. But if there's one thing though, he hasn't been in pain. And I do think that is because he made that decision not to go for the chemotherapy. Of course he suffered, but it wasn't a horrible ending for him.
So upon returning to the UK, he did his tests. He seemed to sort of go downhill pretty fast then, and he get taken into a care home, Nick.
Yeah. He got taken into a care home that was like £1,000 a week. And to be honest with you, it wasn't very good. It was only sort of 4 months ago where Chris and Mandy, they weren't happy and they got him moved to somewhere else. And you know what? Ever since then, he's had fantastic care. I mean, I know last week he had Maria Kerr, end-of-life nurse, and she's been with him for at least a week. And she's been sitting with him going through his videos because she didn't obviously know who he was. And Chris said even my videos came up with Eddie, and she's like, oh, and she's playing them back to Eddie, and every now and again, a smile would come on his face, a grin. He can't really do much, but he was aware. He was aware of what's going on, and I know he was quite aware when we were building this bar, and he was smiling when Chris he was like flicking down the comments and that Chris would say, and that was only 2 months ago.
So the last few months, I think Eddie started to deteriorate quite a lot, and we kind of knew with his lack of speech and stuff that the end was going to be near. So what exactly happened the last few weeks, Nick?
Right, he's been very strong, guys. He's been incredibly strong. He should really have passed away about October, but he's gone on sort of extra 2 months, or an extra 3 months near enough. And they said it's because he's got a very strong heart. Even last week, I was contacted by Chris on Wednesday, and Chris said, Nick, the time is here. I don't think he's going to make 24 hours or 48 hours at the most. And he lasted until Saturday evening, about 6 p.m. They obviously upped the dose of the morphine or whatever drugs they put him on. And he passed away. It's around about 6 p.m. Saturday evening on the 20th.
So join with us for a couple of minutes as we watch a small montage just put together. I think it's a celebration of the life of our friend, Mr. Edward Sweeney.
in the words of Vera Lynn, we'll meet again some sunny day. God bless you guys. Cheers.
Now, Eddie and Chris, they did get to speak about what he wants at the end, which is incredibly difficult to do. And Eddie wants, he's not a religious man. He doesn't want a big sort of funeral in the UK. In fact, he doesn't want any. Eddie, his body is going to lay in, if anybody wants to go and see, you know, I would pay respect to Eddie. He won't be having a funeral in the UK. He's going to be cremated. And the plan has been for many months, although we thought this would happen a couple of months ago, it's going to be that Chris is going to be coming out here sometime in January. Now, he's going to be bringing Eddie's ashes with him. He needs to get all the paperwork done properly, because you can't just fly here and do that, as long as he's got all the details. So he's going to get that done properly. So we're probably looking, maybe Chris, because last year Eddie made it for my birthday. I think Chris has got that plan to come here by then for my birthday. So we're probably looking at sometime mid-January. We're going to have a bit of a wake for Eddie. We're going to have a bit of a sort of ceremony. From what I believe, we don't know yet, but I think he's left some money for everybody to have a drink. Eddie wants to buy you all a drink. This is about celebrating Ed's life, not the sad things, because he gave us all so much joy in our lives. So this is going to be about a celebration of his life. Guys, thank you for sticking to the end of this video. I'm trying to not be morbid, but we are a little bit sad at the moment, even though we've been expecting this for some time. So I want to thank you for sticking with us, and Ed would like you to all smile and to raise a glass for him. Rest in peace, Mr. Edward Sweeney, 1962 to 2025.
I'd like to be under the sea in an octopus's gut in the shade. He'd let us in, knows where we've been, in his octopus's gut in the shade. I ask my friends to come and see an octopus's gut with me. I'd like to be under the sea in an octopus's garden in the shade. We would be warm below the storm in a little hideaway beneath the waves, resting our heads on the seabed in an octopus's garden near the cave. We would sing and dance around, because we know we can't be found. I'd like to be under the sea in an octopus's garden in the shade. And swim about the coral that lies beneath the waves. Oh, what joy for every girl and boy, knowing they're happy and they're safe. We would be so happy, you and me, no one there to tell us what to do.